Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever actually stopped and wondered why you feel totally wired one minute and just completely wiped out the next? Or why stubbing your toe hurts like crazy, but then magically the pain just fades away? Well, today we're going to demystify the literal chemical soup that is running the show up there, dictating basically your every move, thought, and feeling. So let's just kick things off with a pretty simple question. What is actually driving your daily experiences behind the scenes? I mean, from the exact muscles moving my mouth to speak right now to your brain processing these very words, well, it all comes down to microscopic chemical messengers. To break this down, we are going to look at the four main forces driving your day. We've got our fast signals, the amino acids, our mood regulators, the amine transmitters, our long-lasting modulators, known as peptides, and finally, the unconventional rule breakers. But real quick, let's define what we're actually talking about here, just to get our baseline science straight. Simply put, neurotransmitters are those essential little links crossing the gap between your cells. Think about it like this. Without them, your brain is basically a massively powerful supercomputer, but with absolutely no wiring. Now, what's super interesting here is the stark contrast in how these chemicals are actually stored. Notice how those small amino acids and amines fit perfectly into tiny little synaptic vesicles. But then you look at the peptides. They are much larger chains, so they need entirely different, much bigger storage units called secretory granules. It's honestly just a perfect biological example of form-following function. All right, diving into our first group, fast signals, the amino acids. So if you think of your brain like a car, glutamate is absolutely the gas pedal. When you learn something totally new, it's driving that synaptic plasticity and long-term potentiation. But on the flip side, GABA and glycine, they are the brakes. They gate those chloride channels to produce inhibitory potentials, which basically just keeps your neural circuits from completely spinning out of control into overdrive. And we really, really need those brakes, because if glutamate is just left completely unchecked, things get bad. Neurons get so overstimulated that they literally digest themselves. It's a highly destructive process known as excitotoxicity. So yeah, in this case, too much of a good thing is literally toxic to your brain. Moving seamlessly right along to group number 2, mood regulators, the amine transmitters. Acetylcholine, or ACH, actually holds the ultimate honor of being the very first neurotransmitter we ever identified, and it plays this really fascinating dual role. Centrally, up in the basal forebrain, it's helping regulate your sleep-wake cycles and your memory formation, but peripherally, out in the rest of your body, it's acting at the neuromuscular junction to literally trigger your muscles to contract when you jump out of bed in the morning. Okay, let's rapid fire through the rest of these amines. Dopamine? That's what rewards you for completing a hard task. Norepinephrine is the jolt that snaps your attention to traffic on a super busy commute. Epinephrine, or adrenaline, is what triggers that intense, visceral fight-or-flight response, and then serotonin is acting kind of quietly in the background, regulating your overall daily mood. Actually, I want to linger on dopamine for just a second. You know when you find a $20 bill in the pocket of an old winter jacket? That very specific, better-than-expected feeling you get? That is quite literally a reward prediction error being signaled by dopamine. Your brain is essentially running the math, realizing the situation is way better than it anticipated, and giving you a little chemical high to reinforce that whole experience. All right, on to number 3, long-lasting modulators, the peptides. There is such a fascinating duality happening here. Remember that stubbed toe we talked about earlier? When that happens, your nociceptors release substance P, and boom, that delivers the intense burning pain. But then, shortly after, your body's endorphins step in, suppressing glutamate to give you that natural, cooling pain relief. It is literally your brain's very own built-in pain management system. Meanwhile, your secretory hypothalamus is releasing other peptides that just profoundly shape human behavior. You've got oxytocin, which gives you that warm, social bonding feeling when you hug someone you love. And then, working silently right alongside it is vasopressin. It's just quietly in the background regulating your blood volume, your salt concentration, and those basic daily feelings of thirst. And finally, we reach number 4, the unconventional rule breakers. Now, you probably remember ATP from high school biology as the energy currency of your cells, right? But here's the crazy part. It actually moonlights as a co-transmitter that can directly excite certain neurons. It can gate cation channels all by itself. It's honestly just a brilliant example of the brain multitasking, getting creative with the molecules it already has on hand. Okay, let's break down endocannabinoids step by step because they act as retrograde messengers, which means they travel completely backward. Usually, signals go from the presynaptic sending neuron to the postsynaptic receiving one. But here, the receiving cell actually releases lipid molecules that travel in reverse. It's kind of like sending a biological reply all email back to the CB1 receptors, basically just telling the sending neuron, hey, we're good, stop releasing transmitters. And if you thought that was wild, get a load of nitric oxide. It is a literal gas that just floats freely across membranes. Because it's a gas, it isn't trapped in vesicles or bound to specific surface receptors. It just diffuses, influencing entire local tissue networks at once. It's a super powerful retrograde messenger, and scientists have even identified it as a key factor that makes you sleepy at the end of a long, hard day. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to linger on this thought for a second. Human consciousness is ultimately a masterclass in chemical choreography. Seriously, every single complex emotion, memory, and action you experience today is just beautifully, efficiently driven by biology. I mean, if our absolute deepest feelings and our quickest reactions are fundamentally governed by these invisible little molecules, how much of you is actually just a perfectly balanced chemical equation? It is a pretty wild question to carry with you today. Thanks so much for joining me to explore the microscopic messengers that basically make you, well, you.